Imagine this. You're a kid in the late 1980s. You're stuck in The Legend of Zelda. No internet, no guides, no YouTube. So you do the unthinkable. You pick up the phone, and Nintendo starts charging you by the minute to beat their own game. And here's the crazy part. This didn't start as some greedy business plan. It started because Nintendo's phones would not stop ringing. And by the time it was over, Nintendo had turned player frustration into one of the strangest and most profitable support systems in gaming history. And the reason Nintendo wanted you to stay on the line? That comes later. In the mid-1980s, Nintendo's customer support lines existed for one reason: broken consoles, cartridges that wouldn't load, controllers that wouldn't connect. That was it, officially. But something unexpected started happening. Players weren't calling because their NES was broken. They were calling because they were stuck. They couldn't figure out where to go next. They didn't know what an item did. They didn't understand what the game wanted from them. And Nintendo hadn't designed those phones for that. Those lines were built for hardware problems, not how do I beat this boss problems. Then, in 1987, one game caused all hell to break loose. In 1987, The Legend of Zelda exploded in the United States. Over 1 million copies sold, massive for the time. But Zelda didn't just sell well, it confused people. This wasn't a straight-line action game. It didn't tell you where to go. It didn't explain what half the items did. Kids wandered into the lost woods, and some have still never come out. They picked up candles, flutes, and letters with no instructions. They bombed random walls hoping something would happen, because sometimes it did. And when they got stuck, they called Nintendo. Suddenly, Nintendo's support lines were flooded with gameplay questions. Not complaints, not refunds, just desperation. And Nintendo realized something important. This wasn't going away. So they had two choices: shut the phones down, or accept that players didn't just want help, they needed it. Nintendo chose the second option. They launched what became known as the Nintendo Power Hotline, sometimes remembered simply as the Power Line. Instead of tech support agents, Nintendo hired gameplay counselors. Their job wasn't to fix your console, their job was to help you beat the game. And they took it seriously, very seriously. Counselors trained extensively. They were tested on games. They used massive binders filled with hand-drawn maps, notes, and solutions. This wasn't guesswork. And then Nintendo noticed something even more interesting. These calls weren't short, and they weren't occasional. Every year the same thing happened. The holidays. Millions of kids unwrapped new Nintendo games and immediately got stuck. Inside Nintendo's call centers, the phones exploded. Former counselors called it Hell Week. Call queue boards filled up fast, 100 calls waiting, 200, 300. Counselors answered calls non-stop, back to back, barely catching their breath. Same questions, same puzzles, same dungeons. It was chaos, and it was proof the hotline wasn't just useful, it was becoming essential. And that kind of chaos creates a question no company can ignore. Who pays for all this time? Helping someone beat a game doesn't just take 30 seconds. Walking a kid through a dungeon, explaining a puzzle step by step, helping them recover from a mistake they made an hour earlier, that all takes time, a lot of time. So Nintendo switched to a pay-per-minute model. By the 1990s, the commonly reported rate was about $1.50 per minute, which doesn't sound terrible until you realize a quick question could easily turn into a 10 or 15-minute call. Nintendo's logic was simple. If players quit in frustration, they don't come back. So keeping you playing was good business. But here's where things get uncomfortable. Some former counselors admitted they had call time expectations. They knew longer calls meant more revenue. And yes, some counselors have acknowledged that if a call needed stretching, it could be stretched. Maybe not maliciously, maybe not dishonestly, but enough to make parents notice, which they did. For kids, the hotline felt magical. For parents, it felt like betrayal. Phone bills started showing unexpected charges. 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, just added up. And suddenly, Nintendo Helpline wasn't cute anymore. It was expensive. But by then, the system was massive. At its height, Nintendo employed a couple of hundred counselors. Each counselor could take close to 100 calls per shift. That's thousands of calls per day. One former counselor even remembers Nintendo handing out a shirt bragging they'd handled 28 million calls. So this wasn't a gimmick. It was a full-scale call center machine. And buried inside all the frustration, noise, and angry phone bills, Nintendo realized they were sitting on something far more powerful than just a helpline. What Nintendo realized was profound. They weren't just helping players, they were collecting intelligence accidentally. They knew where players got stuck, which puzzles confused people, which games caused the most frustration. If thousands of kids got stuck in the same spot, Nintendo knew within days. That information fed back into things like strategy guides, the Nintendo Power magazine, and eventually game design itself. So Nintendo wasn't just selling games, they were managing the experience of finishing them. And for a while, it all worked. Until the internet made answers impossible to sell. By the early 2000s, the internet had changed everything. Walkthroughs were free. Facts or FAQs were instant. Forums solved problems faster than any phone call ever could. Paying by the minute suddenly felt ludicrous. And in 2005, the Nintendo Power Hotline was gone. No dramatic announcement, no farewell campaign. It simply disappeared. Because once answers are free, charging for them simply doesn't make sense. So Nintendo didn't set out to charge kids to beat their games. They were more or less forced into it by complexity, curiosity, and frustration. But in the process, they built a massive knowledge operation, a new kind of customer support, and a business model that was unique to the time. And for an entire generation, beating a Nintendo game sometimes meant doing something strange, desperate, and unforgettable. Asking your parents if you could call Nintendo, or skipping that step entirely, and hoping they never checked the phone bill. So I want to know, did you ever call the Nintendo hotline, or did you know someone who did? Feel free to share your story below. And if you enjoyed this video, well, you know what to do. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and happy gaming, my friends.